Zora and Me, Chapter 20. I'd hoped we could keep these thinking on questions with Zora, but she was late and Teddy had to get back to do his chores. When Zora finally showed up half an hour later, I hadn't gotten any further in my figuring on Ivory, and the peanut brittle was gone. Zora walked up to the front step like she had lead in both shoes. She sat down beside me. "Why are you so late?" I asked. "Where you been? You missed Teddy." Then she spoke quietly and completely unlike herself. "I was at the Levin Pine." "By yourself? Why? What happened?" "I thought I was there by myself." I got a chill right then. "What you mean, Zora? You were either there by yourself or you weren't." "I was at the Levin Pine, Carrie, feeling down, real down, wishing it was me got hurt instead of you. I was thinking about how maybe I was wrong about Mr. Pender being the Gator King. Then I heard something." "What?" I was about ready to jump out of my skin. Sure, she was going to say she had heard Ivory's soul singing, just like I thought I had. I'd never spoken the word believer in my life, but that's what I was, a believer in ghosts. "You hear Ivory?" "No, Carrie," Zora said slowly. "I didn't hear Ivory, but I heard all about him. Joe Clark was in the woods by the Levin Pine." "Joe Clark? Talk to you about Ivory?" Zora shook her head. "No, not me. Remember that lady we saw in Lake Matland? Gold?" "Of course," I answered. "How's she know Mr. Clark?" "I don't know, but she does. And what's more, Joe Clark knew Ivory too. And what's more," she took a deep breath, "Ivory was Gold's brother." "Say what now?" I nearly shouted. "Ivory was colored like us, and Gold, she's white, ain't she?" "I don't know what she is," Zora said, "but she's not the same as other white folks." "I don't get it. White folks think she's one of them, don't they?" "Yeah, but from what Mr. Clark said to her, Gold don't know who she is, and don't nobody else know either. Anyway, she said she couldn't find Ivory anywhere, and Mr. Clark said, 'There's a reason you can't find your brother. It's because he's dead.'" She freezes. "No, no, no, he can't be dead, he can't be." And Mr. Clark, standing with his hands on his hips and looking real angry, says, "Well, he can be, because he is, and I seen the body. Somebody made real sure he was dead, because they went and killed him, took his head clean off to make sure." My rickety front step became a stage. Zora deepened her voice when she spoke Joe Clark's words. She whimpered when she transformed into Gold, and clear as day I saw the beautiful woman in my mind's eye. Now Gold falls all to pieces. Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. Zora was walking in a circle, wringing her hands and looking up to heaven. Then she spun around to face Joe Clark. "I have to take him home. I have to take him home." "But Joe Clark ain't having none of it." "Home? What home? You can't take that boy home, 'cause you ain't got no home to take him to, mixed up with white folks as you is. To have a home to go to, a real one, you gotta be unafraid to be who you are. And who you gonna take him to? That man I seen you with? I'm pretty sure you haven't told him who you really are." And Gold gets this crazy look and starts saying, "No, no, no, I." And Mr. Clark, he don't budge. He says, "Your only pain comes from playing pretend with white folks." Then Zora as Joe got a real hard look, almost like hate, but not, equal parts pity and cold fury. Pity of it is, all that damage of pretending done run off you like rainwater only to soak poor Ivory to the bone. Then she starts into wailing. "What do I do now? What do I do without Ivory?" Zora as Gold's eyes are wild, like she was seeing a ghost and couldn't look away. Then Zora as Joe shook his head. "You were already living without him, so you'll just go on doing that." Zora as Gold slumped down against the copper beech in front of our porch. "Ivory, Ivory." Then she set to crying hard. And Joe Clark just stared at her for I don't know how long. Didn't say a word. Gold looks up at him like she's pleading for her life. "I can't," she says, wailing. "Please let me stay here in Eatonville with you. We Eatonville folks ain't got the fear of whites in us, and I won't allow anyone to bring that fear here. Here, Eatonville is our home." Finally, he says, "Go back to Matland." And that's all. But he says it in his voice like the voice of Judgment Day. "Maybe you're wrong. Maybe Ivory's not dead," she says. "I have to stay here where he can find me." Joe shakes his head. "There ain't no one looking to find you now. No one worth a plugged nickel." Then he turned and walked back in the direction of town. I expected her to get herself up and go back to Lake Matland, but she just sat there, staring and wailing. I think she's still there crying right now. Zora got up from the tree and sat back down next to me, breathless from her performance. I couldn't believe my ears. Gold must have been the one Ivory was looking to find, the somebody who didn't know she was lost. Then Zora said something that spun me like a top. "Every time I try to explain to myself what probably happened, what really happened outgrows my explanation." I'd never before seen Zora unable to fold new information into her own telling of a thing. Her doubts, coming right on top of Teddy's doubts about the Gator King, shook me. I found myself pacing in a little line back and forth, holding my sling-bound arm against my side. Mr. Pender, who'd fixed my broken arm, wasn't a gator, let alone a Gator King. He never was. It was impossible now to imagine that shy, gentle man killing Ivory. And if Mr. Pender wasn't the Gator King, maybe there wasn't ever even a Gator King at all, like Teddy said. But that thought didn't relieve me. Instead, it filled me with a strange kind of fury. The things that before were painful were suddenly unbearable. Zora had made me a story out of events that were too huge and too frightening for me to hold. She had put them neatly into places that let me step back and see them, name them, understand them, and do something about them. Now she was taking that away from me. Not because she was selfish or mean, but because she had a relentless curiosity. Zora's only real crime was wanting to know what we shouldn't have known, and then not knowing until it was too late that we shouldn't have known it. I was shattered. My faith in the magic that holds the world on its axis had broken. I wanted to cry, but I had no tears. I wanted to shout and scream instead, to tear things apart on the outside so that they looked like how I felt on the inside. I spun on my heels and pointed my stick at Zora. You know what? It's your fault. It's your fault, all of it. First you made up the Gator King. No, first you took Ghost and made him into the Gator King. And every time you talked about it, the evil got kicked up higher in the air and bad things started to happen. To Ivory, and old Lady Bronson, and me. It was you who made it happen. Your words brought evil to life. It didn't have no power before you conjured it. I meant every word of it, even if it didn't make sense, even if I didn't believe it, any of it, an hour later. Only years later did I understand why the death of Ivory, a man I barely knew, had rocked me like an earthquake. It seems obvious now. Any grown person with a heart would have seen it long before. That was the day that in my gut I finally realized that my father was gone for good. He wasn't coming back, and we weren't going to save him any more than we could have saved Ivory. That was the day I finally began mourning him. The day I finally allowed myself to believe that he was dead, along with all the songs and smiles and warm words that should have supported me as I grew, that should have fought off hurts that wounded me, that should have held me and cradled me and crooned me in my ear. Sleep, little pretty one, hush now, hush. My daddy's voice could have made Ivory's death less terrifying. It would still have been sad, even horrible, but it wouldn't have pitched all sense out of my 10-year-old world. But that wisdom only showed itself to me in hindsight. That afternoon, as I paced back and forth in my short line, faster and faster, kicking up the dirt in little brown clouds around my ankles, rage shot through me. Rage, and it was all aimed at Zora. But she didn't respond in kind. Instead of being angry back at me, instead of telling me how and why I was wrong, she looked up at me from the front step, nodded slowly, and stood. Maybe she understood what was really in my thoughts. Or maybe she was having thoughts of her own. Either way, she took my hand and said, "Let's go see gold."